to Work at Home Success, where you're going to get everything, the tips, the tools, the resources, and the know-how to create the work at home career of your dreams. I'm Leslie Truex, also known as the Pajama Mama, and I'm the author of the Work at Home Success Bible and the owner of workathomesuccess.com, a free resource packed with work at home information. You can learn more about the book and the site by visiting www.workathomesuccess.com.
Hi, this is Leslie, and welcome to the Work at Home Success Podcast, and thank you for joining me today. I've got a really great show for you. I'm interviewing Crilley, Mallis, who is a time strategy visionary. At the basic, she helps people with time management, but it's really so much more than that. She really helps people get clear about their goals and making sure that the choices and actions that they're taking are meeting those goals. And if one of your goals is working at home, she's got some really great tips that are going to help you really just get some clarity around that. Make sure you're doing all the right stuff. Plus, you'll hear her story about how she got started as a time management coach. Unlike a lot of people you hear on the show who seem to know right out the gate what they want to do, it took her a little time to figure out what she wanted to do, what she was good at, and she's going to tell us that as well. And it could be inspiration for you if you're struggling with figuring out what you want to do from home. Now, before we get to that, I do have a few things I want to share with you. Now, you know, back in October, I had all these grand goals, all these tasks that I was going to complete, and I was tracking them on a calendar every day. I was putting word counts for my books and actions completed on tasks and all sorts of stuff. And then I got sick, and that sort of threw a wrench into everything. And so while the month started strong, it did not end well. And there's a part of me that feels like I should have tried harder. I could have done it if I really pushed it. Then there's that part of me that says, geez, you were sick. And when you're sick, you need to take care of yourself. It's no fun to work when you're sick. It's hard to get better when you work when you're sick. So I need to cut myself a little bit of slack. And I just wanted to mention that because I know when it comes to achieving goals, especially long-term ones, like working at home, that really takes some time to put together, it can be really frustrating and difficult to stay the course. And if you fall off the wagon, so to speak, it's really hard to get back on. I equate it to like being on a diet. Anybody out there who's dieted and knows you're doing really well, and then you eat something bad, and then all of a sudden it just all goes to pot, and you just start eating bad all the time, every day, all the time. And it's really hard to get back into the groove of making the choices that you want to make to lose the weight. The same is true with working at home, and to a certain extent happened to me last month, that once I got off the pace and stopped doing the things every day that I wanted to do, it was really difficult to get back on, so I didn't finish very strong. But November's a new month, and I've started with new goals and a couple of the same from last month, and so far this month I'm going really strong. And that's sort of the point I want to make. Just because you have a failure or something gets in the way and stops you in your tracks, or you forget to do something today that you promised yourself you were going to do, whatever it is, the very next moment is when you can get back on track. You don't just have to tell yourself, well, I'm no good at this, I'm not going to try, or I missed today, so I might as well just finish the rest of the day being bad. At any moment, you can turn that around and do the right thing. In my case, I started again on November 1st, and of course I didn't have to do that. I could have done it on November 26th or whenever it was that I was feeling better again and ready to get back going. I do like to start on Mondays or the first days of the month and things like that. I just like that symmetry. But really, ideally, the best time to start is right now. So if that is you, if you've kind of got out of the habit of looking for jobs or building your business or looking for the best opportunity for you, right now you can change that and start doing what you need to do. If you're listening to this podcast, you're already sort of doing something that you can do. But of course, when this podcast is over, you can go and do the next thing that you'd been putting off doing, whether that's, searching for jobs or, posting something on social media about your business, whatever it is, you can get started right away. So that's something I wanted to share today, that even I sometimes get off track, but it's really easy to get back on track if you just make yourself do it. I do want to remind you to visit workathomesuccess.com, where I got lots of cool stuff that has been going up. I posted some information on how to make some money during the holiday season. The holidays I know, are very, very busy. It's also a good time to make some money, though. I also posted some interesting factoids about work at home success. One of them, I'll tell you right here, is that work at home success is older than Google, which is pretty cool. Maybe not as big and well known as Google. It doesn't have a noun with it. You can Google something, but at Work at Home Success, we're not quite that big, but we've been around longer, and we're still here going strong, helping you work from home. I also posted tech tools that every home-based worker needs, so if you're curious about what kinds of equipment and things that you might need to have, you can check that out. Plus, work at home jobs are going up every day, so if you haven't been by, you need to stop by workathomesuccess.com, and while you're there, be sure to sign up for the newsletter, where I send occasional updates out about what you need to know about working at home. And also on Fridays, when I send the announcement about the newsletter being up and ready to go, I'm sending a freebie out, and the only people that get that freebie are people who subscribe to the newsletter, and that freebie is always related to something that can help you work from home. So if you want that, be sure to sign up and get that. One final little shout out over at homebusiness.about.com, where I've got lots of great articles going up if you want to start a home business. I included an article on the 7 secrets of successful home business owners. So if you really want to know what it takes to be successful in a home business, you're going to want to check that out. I also posted on lessons my kids taught me about building a home business, which are just some fun little things that you can watch kids and figure out. There's some things that they do in life that we can learn from. We kind of grow out of them a lot of times as we get older. Plus, how to lower your printing and paper costs. We live in a digital world, but sometimes you still need to print. Ink is expensive, so you can read all that plus a whole lot more. Again, it's over at homebusiness.about.com. Well, that's it for announcements. We're going to go ahead and get started with the interview with Lisa. Did want to point out this week that I went to a new recording type. As you know, last week I had some difficulty. I was recording over Skype, and that sounded kind of wonky in some places, so I went back to doing a different kind of recording, and still, the quality is not great to me, although it's a different type of grade. It sounds a little bit more muffled, but you'll be able to hear everything. But please know that this is an issue I am working on, because I know it can get distracting sometimes if the quality of the interview isn't as great as you would like it to be. So I am working on that, and until then, let's go ahead and get started with the interview with Lisa. Lisa Crilley Mallis, time strategy visionary, combines her experience in secondary education and direct sales and her love of schedule systems and all things time management to create SystemSavvy Consulting. Now, she believes every person deserves the opportunity to live the life of their dreams, feeling in control and bringing balance to their lives. The crazy I'm so busy feeling does not have to be a way of life. Lisa is a master at cutting to the heart of overwhelm and has helped countless clients regain control of their schedules and experience life. Her book, 30 Days to Success, an awe-inspired journal, is now available, and included with this journal is the 30-day awe-inspired challenge, and you can learn more about Lisa and the book and the challenge over at SystemSavvyConsulting.com. Lisa, thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I was going to say thanks for having me, but
I know. I was like, wait a minute. That's my line.
Oh, it's going to be one of those days. Well, I appreciate your being here, and I'm excited to talk with you because when it comes to working at home, a lot of people I talk to just feel like they don't have the time to make it happen, and time is one of those things that people struggle with. I struggle with time too, so I'm going to be real excited to talk with you about that. But first, I want to start by having you tell us how you got started working from home.
I did not start out to be working from home, actually. It was kind of evolved. My background is in high school education, and so I had started as a high school teacher and then an administrator, and then through working long hours and having that I'm so busy feeling all the time, I had a bit of a health scare and realized that I could not keep up the pace that I had set for myself. And it wasn't necessarily anything that anyone on the outside in the organization was imposing upon me. It was me. You know, things had to be the way I wanted them to be, and if I worked a lot of hours in a fairly stressful situation, that was okay. So I reached a point where that was not okay, and I needed to reassess and step back. And so for years, I had been in a direct selling organization. And so when I left the school district, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and I'll pursue this as more of a full-time income, because though I'm not working in an outside quote-unquote job, I still knew I needed to bring in some money, and I needed something for myself anyway, like self-fulfillment type of a plan. And so I started to run that direct sales company, my portion of it, for a year, and thought, this isn't exactly where I want to be. And so I went back to school and continued to work in the school district, and proceeded to do exactly what I had done the first time and run myself into a wall as far as my health was concerned, and had to step back again. And the second time was when I started to realize, okay, you need a change. You need to make a massive change. Let's figure out what you want that to be. And so over the course of a couple years of working part-time in a school district and deciding what I wanted, I knew I wanted to run my own business, and I knew I wanted to do it from home. And so then I started to figure out, what is it that I wanted to do? What was I good at? What jazzed me? What gave me energy versus taking energy away? And then I started SystemSavvy Consulting, and started to work with entrepreneurs who have very similar journeys to myself.
There's a couple of things you said that I want to highlight. I take notes as I interview so I can go back. And one thing you talked about was, just sort of that feeling of overwhelm or the sapping of energy. And, one thing that a lot of times I think people don't realize, when people have talked to me about work-life balance, they sort of see it as a time management thing, and certainly that is a part of it. But that energy, I think, is a component too. You could be mentally drained and still not doing anything because of those feelings like this has to be done, or it wasn't done right, or how am I going to get it done? And I know in my own life, like today's kind of a busy day. I still haven't voted yet, but it's sort of like, you know what, just one thing at a time. Don't be worried about that other stuff. Just one thing at a time. And I'm wondering if that, if that's something that sort of plays in with what you do.
It absolutely does. And so one of the things that popped into my mind as you were talking about that energy draining is the idea of, and it took me a while to be able to really think through this idea, but the idea that just because you're good at something doesn't mean it's what you're meant to do. And it doesn't mean that fills you with energy. Like, you could be really good at something and it saps your energy. And I found that was where I was. I was very good at my job when I was working in a school district. However, I was getting things done. I was very efficient, very effective. However, it wasn't what was in my best interest on a health end. It was an energy sapper, not an energy giver. And so that feeling of, I'm really good at this, doesn't necessarily mean you want to continue through and on that path if you, at the end of the day, aren't feeling fulfilled and energized.
So how did you come on, because, you're talking, and I love that you're sort of talking about, okay, I know that I want to do this from home. What can I do? What am I good at? What will give me energy? Sort of talking about the process, because a lot of people I interview, they kind of know right off the bat, I'm going to do this. But I think a lot of people who are listening are kind of in that place that I'm not quite sure what to do. So sort of hearing your process, I think, will be really helpful. And you talked about, here's things that I'm good at, but they were draining. They, took a lot of mental energy. So how did you come upon, I like systems, I like organization, I like, tools that help people manage time. How did you get to that?
And I wish what I could tell you is that, there was this epiphany, or, I always wish I had, a really cool story, but it wasn't. It was a matter of little situations happening over and over and over again in a shorter period of time, to where I finally stopped and took notice. So it was things like a friend saying, she runs she's in the direct sales business, and she has office help come in a couple days a week and saying, I've got my office help coming today, and I feel like such a loser because I'm going to just sit there with them because I don't know what to tell them to do, and I'll have to watch them do it. And I'm like, well, that's not a good use of your time or your money. And she's like, well, will you come down and help me figure that out? And I was like, well, of course I will. Because in my brain, that's so easy. Well, this person has skills here, they do these tests. This person has skills here, they do these tests. For her, it's not at all simple. So, there was that situation. Then there was another friend who called and said, I have this big goal, and I'm working so hard to get there, but I feel like all I'm doing is spinning my wheel. All day long, I'm busy, yet I can cross 20 things off my list, but I am no closer to accomplishing my goal now than I was a year ago. What's going on? And so being able to go in there and from an outside perspective and look at it and say, oh, wait a minute, you're doing this, but what about this? And so there's situations like that occurred over the course of, I'd say, maybe about 6 months, so there was that piece, and then there was the piece of, wait a minute, time management coaching is a real thing. Like coaches, there's certification, there's a certifying body for coaches. There's a certifying body for professional organizers. I didn't know either of those two existed, so, in my head I was like, well, it all of a sudden had validity because there was an organization out there that I could belong to instead of just making up my own job. I felt like I needed that external validity and certification process.
So I'm thinking, when it comes to time management, because I will admit I'm organizationally challenged, and I've sort of created systems that are working for me, but they're not, they're not perfect. There's still things. Part of the problem is I have a bazillion ideas and a bazillion projects going at once, and there's just the logistics. There's only so many hours in a day, but a lot of times when I think, I'm gonna get this organized or whatever, it takes time to figure that out. And it's like, I don't have time to figure stuff out. I need it to be done. And so I'm wondering, when people come to you, are they just completely maxed out, or because it would take time to get a coach to, help them, I would think.
Right. And so clients come to me from different areas of life, different reasons. One of the things that they tend to have in common is that they're looking to be more efficient, for whatever those reasons may be. So it could be like what you're saying. You're writing multiple books and you're trying to work through that, plus making the changes on your website, plus writing articles for other places. So there's all these things that you're doing, and it's like, okay, wait a minute. It's just feeling like my day's getting squeezed. What can I do? Where other people will come in and, they'll say, okay, I'm working 6 days a week. I do not want to do that anymore. I want a 3-day weekend every weekend. How do I become more efficient in that end? And so then we explore that. So one of the things I share with my clients is, okay, there may be a front load of effort and time. You absolutely may need to front load your effort and time in order to feel the bonus at the end, like delegating. It is a great idea in theory. We all know I can take this off my plate and give it to someone else. Think of how great that will be, all the time I'll save. But in reality, there's a lag time between when you take it off your plate and give it to someone to when you start to feel that relief, because there's still that checking back, making sure things are working the way you want them to, finding the right person to delegate to. There's a process. And so finding a coach is a process. Having someone that can come in and look at what's going on and say, okay, you know what, these systems are great. Like you said, you've created systems that work for you. That's the whole goal, is to find something that works for you. And it was a trial and error process. And it takes a while to get it exactly where you want it to be.
Yeah. In an ideal world, I'd have somebody that sits in my office, and they'd probably be bored. I'd probably let them read or play video games. But then I would say, put this away for me, or get this out for me, or because I'm terrible at, putting stuff away. And, my desk is a mess, always.
Well, and so it's those types of things that you're talking about that I advise clients, write a list of those. Yeah. Because, jokingly, you're like, I would probably, I let them watch video games or, whatever that it may be. However, maybe the option is you have a list of all these 5-10 minute tasks and someone comes in for 3 hours on, a Wednesday afternoon and knocks through all those tasks for you. But it's that building awareness. Many of my clients will say, after like our third week together, I'll say, how are things going? And they're like, I hate this. And I'm like, you hate what? And they'll say, I am so much more aware now of all the things I don't like. Ignorance was bliss. I liked it better before. Yeah. And it's like that dark before the dawn. It always gets worse before it gets better. Because now all of a sudden there's this whole new awareness around you, and you're like, I liked it better when I didn't know what I didn't know.
Right. That's funny. Now, you have a term that you sort of use called a time strategy visionary, and is that what we're talking about now? What does that kind of mean when you?
It is exactly what we're talking about. So a lot of people will say, oh, you're a time management coach, and I'll say, yeah, kind of. And I look at it maybe a little bit differently than some other time management coaches will look at it, or productivity coaches will look at it. My whole thing is to start, like Stephen Covey says, start with the end in mind. What is it you want from your life? Where are you now, and where is it that you want to be? That's the visionary piece. What's your big picture? What do you want? Then the time strategy piece is, okay, now let's build that bridge from where you are now to where it is that you want to be. So saving an hour a day is great, but if you don't know what you want to do with it, what's the use? So it's figuring out, okay, here's where I am. This is where I want to be. Now let's look at how to work more efficiently and effectively to get there. So I just was speaking with a client the other day who works long hours, and he is dead set he's going to keep working those long hours. And I said, okay, if that's your reality, I'm not going to judge that. That's your reality. You want to work a 14-hour day because you're just getting your business off the ground, that's great. But what would be possible if some of those tasks that you did today, someone else did? Like, what are the pieces that only you can do? And he has a podcast that's heard on 130 countries, I think he's in right now. And he says, I love interviewing my guests, but frankly, after that, the rest of it I don't want to do. And I said, well, what would be possible if you could delegate those things away to someone else? And he's like, well, I could fill all this time with my family and creating a membership site. And, all of a sudden he started listing all these things. And that's the piece that I think comes in when we talk about the visionary pieces. Just delegating that stuff off his plate doesn't matter if he doesn't know what he wants to fill that time with. And once he knew, then it all takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah, sort of like an incentive.
And that is, like, because he said at first when we were talking delegating, he goes, well, if I just took stuff off my plate, all I do is sit around and watch TV. I don't know what I would do with that time. And so then when we could back it around again and say, okay, wait a minute, let's think about what are the possibilities? What are the things that you don't have time to do now that you love to do? How old are your kids? How much time do you spend, with your wife? How much time do you want to spend? And like really digging in deeper, and all of a sudden he's like, oh my God, it's like this whole new world opened. And he sent me a list yesterday. He's like, I delegated this, and this, and my wife and I went to dinner. And we haven't done that in like 5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, because 6 days a week is a lot to work.
Yes, and 14-hour days? Come on.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, clearly he must if he's not wanting to let go of it, he must enjoy it, and that's always good.
Right.
But his wife cannot enjoy it.
Well, I know. I was like, and I told him, I'm like, I am not a marriage counselor, so spending time with your wife you find out was not a good idea, you do not come back and tell me that. You figure something else out. But that idea of, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life, that is absolutely true, but it doesn't mean that's the end. There may be more in your life that you're missing when you're working all those hours.
Right. Now, the other end of that, though, I would think, I imagine there's got to be some people out there who have things that they want. They have too many things maybe that they want to do. At some point you can't do it all at the same time maybe. And maybe in my case, I always tell people I have this thing called adiaphoria, and I get ideas. Sometimes I run with them before I'm thinking, and I've got all sorts of dormant blogs, which were great ideas when I started, but then it's like I just don't have, if I do them, then it takes away from the other things that I'm doing. And so I'm wondering if you have people kind of like that where you kind of got to rein them in, it's like,
Absolutely. A good portion of my clients have ADHD tendencies, whether they are diagnosed ADHD or not. And one of those tendencies is to generate a ton of ideas. Like people will come to me and say, "Oh, this is one of my bad sides," or whatever, and I was like, "No, this is great. You're so super creative. And you have all these great ideas. Now let's figure out a way to harness that energy for good. Like, what can we do?" Right. And so one of the things we'll joke about is, one idea well acted on is better than 25 ideas that you're thinking about. And often we'll build some sort of a structure or a framework to determine how do you decide what you're going to spend your time on and where you're going to invest your time. And how do you decide which ideas you're going to put into a parking lot to evaluate later? And when do you decide it's time to let one go? Like, what does those things look like? And once we can start to build a little bit of structure and framework around that process, it takes away some of the, like sometimes there's that anxiousness of I'm missing out on something because I'm trying to do this, this, and this, but there's still all these things over here. And so it's a matter of looking at what are your priorities, what are your goals, which one of these great ideas feeds best back into those goals and priorities, and which ones are just, frankly, shiny objects. Because sometimes it is, like you said, idea euphoria. Sometimes it's just a really cool idea, and then you realize, wait a minute, there's no correlation between that idea and anything I've identified as a goal for this quarter. So maybe I just need to let it go.
Yeah. And I like that idea of, this is my goal for this time, and these other things just have to kind of go on a list. Although if they nag at me, sometimes I'll move them.
Mm-hmm.
I'll move them up if they bother me. But yeah, I do that. I sort of have a goal. This is what I want to do, and it's required me to have to make choices and do more delegation and things like that, which is good because then I get to focus on the things that I like to do. But sometimes it is hard to let stuff go. Hello?
Absolutely.
I just heard a phone ring. Did you?
The call dropped, but I was trying to slide back in seamlessly.
Oh, okay.
So all the listeners, this is what happens sometimes.
Oh, the joys of working for yourself from home.
Yes. This is I am my own tech person.
Yeah.
I am my own marketer. I apologize for that brief amount of dead air because that's what happened.
Well, and that's, sometimes I'll edit this stuff out. A lot of times I'll just leave it in because it's an example. Stuff happens. Nothing goes perfectly at home, even if you have it well planned and strategized and time managed, like you're saying, which actually it comes into another good question is best laid plans are often, they get messed up, and especially if you have your schedule. I mean, my schedule's pretty, because there's a lot of stuff I like to do and want to do, so it gets pretty tight. And if something goes wrong, if my internet goes out, then it's like, okay, now what? And do you have strategies for that? Like you got this great schedule now. What are you going to do now?
Right. I remember one of my clients last week said, I've created this schedule and now I'm afraid I'm going to break it. Mm-hmm. And I go, what are you talking about? She's like, it's scheduled down to the very last minute, and if anything happens, the whole thing's going to break and I'll need to start over. And I said, okay, well, then this is not a good schedule. Let's back it up and let's figure out how do we create something for you that you can feel at ease with versus having something where you're feeling, stressed, like if one thing goes wrong, the whole thing falls apart. And so one of the strategies that I encourage people to do is when they're creating their schedule is to really think about how long should each activity take. Like estimate the time. And I will admit estimation is a tough skill because it's a skill. And until you've done things a number of times, it can be tough to know how long something will take. And so I say, well, now let's estimate our time on that task. Because a lot of my clients will start with, I have a to-do list of, 30 things, and I'm going to get them all done on Monday. Well, unless everything is like 4 minutes long, no, you're not. So let's look at it a little bit closer. And so we start to estimate how long will they take. And then I encourage them to multiply either by 1.5 or by 3, meaning if it's a task they've done before and they know it takes them 30 minutes to do it, go ahead and plan for 45 minutes. Give yourself a little bit of buffer time so when things don't go according to plan, you are able to move forward, like this call. You know, the call dropped in the middle. I was able to get back on. However, if you have to go now and edit and choose to edit that piece out, which now you're not going to because I just made an example of it, so you won't. But it would take extra time because normally you probably edit at the beginning and at the end, not as much in the middle.
Right.
And it would take time to find that spot. And so you can build that time in. So whenever you're doing something that you've done before, multiply by 1.5. So give yourself, 50% extended time on that. But if you're doing something you've never done before, I always say use the rule of 3. Multiply by 3. So if you say, I'm going to sit down and my goal is to put something, I'm going to do a new plugin on my blog, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm looking for, so it'll probably take me 20 minutes to find it, install it, and make sure it works. Give yourself an hour because you don't know what you don't know when you start to work in that area, so it may take you longer to find what you're looking for. Or you may install it and realize that it doesn't work well with what you have set up already, and doing one thing had a ripple down effect into all these others. So if you can give yourself that extra time, you start to pad your schedule so you don't feel that, oh, my gosh, if one thing happens, my whole day is thrown out of control.
Yeah.
And then I have a client who says anything technology-related, you multiply by 10. So I use the rule of 1.5 and the rule of 3. She uses the rule of 10.
Yeah, and because things always, especially the plug-in example, things always take longer to get them. Like I'm going to change the theme on my site here. But, I'm sort of sitting like knowing I need to choose a time where it's got the lowest amount of traffic on it, for one thing, because I don't want to upset people who are visiting. But, yeah, knowing that it's probably going to it takes 2 seconds to replace a theme, but then you have to go in and fix everything that went wonky when you did it.
Right. Absolutely. And you won't know going in what that will be until it happens.
Right. Exactly. And what plugins will not work with the new theme and, all that stuff. So, yeah. I usually try and do it in the middle of the night, but it's not always the middle of the night for the people who visit the site. If they're in Australia, They might be like, what the heck?
Right. It's noon. What are you doing?
What's the deal? But, yeah, a lot of things take a lot longer than people expect them to. But, there's sort of the reverse of that, I would think sometimes. For example, this month is National Novel Writing Month. I do it every year. I don't always succeed at reaching the goal, which is 50,000 words in 30 days. But people are like, that's just crazy in this time of year. And I'm like, it's 1,600 words, 1,667 words a day. It takes me only an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half, if I know what I'm going to say when I sit down and write it, which is not that much. But it's real easy when you think of 50,000 words, and it's like, it's too much. But some things might actually be easier if you just sort of break it down.
Absolutely. And so you look at that big, overwhelming goal, and you think, oh, my gosh, especially someone who hasn't done it before, I'll never get to 50,000 words. And then you look at, okay, wait a minute, that's, 1,667 words, a day. And you break it back, and you're like, oh, okay, that's that much a day. And then you're like, oh, man, I've never written, my biggest blog post. My longest blog post was 700 words. That's over, wow. Wow, okay. Then it's 2 times that you sit down and write 800 words a piece.
Yeah.
So you break that down until you get to the step that you're like, oh, I can so do that.
This is doable. Yeah, because my father has said to me, he goes, I could never write a book. Well, my father was a newspaper man, and he wrote editorials. He's like, I can only write 750 words at a time. I'm like, a book is just a bunch of 750-word segments, It's like,
can you imagine
write a
the
book
book
a day.
he has? Yeah, can you imagine, though, the book that he has from what he's already written?
Well, I know I've told him that, but he just doesn't see it. But the point is sort of it kind of goes both ways. Sometimes people get very, very overwhelmed, and if they could just figure out how to break it down into doable chunks, that proverbial elephant eating the elephant thing, it can be that. But at the same time, like I usually allocate 2 hours to do it because sometimes I do get stuck. Sometimes I'm on 1,200 words, and I'm like, oh gosh, I need another at least 400 words. And I don't know what I'm going to say, so sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But at the same time, a lot of times, things are more doable than people think.
Right. And, what I always will tell my clients is, what's the worst thing that happens if you overestimate how long something will take? You have extra time.
You have extra time. Take a nap.
Yeah. Pull something off of that someday list that you keep saying, I'll get there someday. Pull something off the someday list. Take a nap. Take a walk. Do whatever.
Yeah. And in terms of working at home, this happens to a lot of people. It's like, they sort of think they have to get it all done in one day. And working at home is a big project, no matter what it is you're doing. It takes time to write a resume. It takes time to search for jobs. It takes time to start a blog or whatever it is you're doing. Right. And they keep putting it off, waiting for the stars to align or to have more time or for the kids to go to school or, whatever it is. And you probably have this too, people putting stuff off, and you're like, today's the day to do it, even if it's
take
15
action.
minutes.
Just take action no matter what it is, because otherwise what happens is you wake up 5 years down the road and you look back and you're like, I'm no further ahead than I was 5 years ago.
Yeah, but you take 15 minutes a day in a year, you're well ahead of what you thought you would be.
Right. There's that Japanese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time to plant the tree is today.
Today, yeah.
So just do it today.
Yeah.
I had read somewhere, like, if you read 15 minutes a day, you would finish, like, I don't know, so many books a year.
Yeah.
And I thought that was, I don't remember. I want to say 20, but I'm totally making up that number. So if you happen to know what that is, by all means, put it in the show notes. But there's this stat out there that talks about 15 minutes a day, what you can accomplish in a year.
Yeah. You could do a lot in just a couple minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's for sure. That's for sure. Now, you've written a book, 30 Days to Success, an all-inspired journal. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that, because I'm thinking 30 Days to Success, but then it talks about a journal, so it sounds like an interactive book.
It is. It absolutely is. The 30 Days to Success, people will often say to me, why did you pick 30 days? Because a month sounds good. I'm not saying that in 30 days you will change your life. I'm saying 30 days is a great amount of time to focus on one task to where you can start to gain some traction. So some people will use the 30 Days to Success all-inspired journal to track their progress on a habit. So they're trying to add meditation into their day, and so they're tracking what time of the day has it worked. Were they able to do what they wanted to do? Other people will use it to help with a project. And so they'll say, my goal is to completely and totally update my website, or to create a membership site on that goes with my site, or to create a marketing plan, or whatever that project type goal may be, plan a trip to Hawaii, whatever it may be. And so with this Awe-Inspired Journal, it goes hand in hand with the Awe Challenge. And what that is 30 days, participants receive an email with a 2 to 3 minute video in it with action steps. And so we walk right through the process for 30 days. How are you going to choose your goal? Once you pick your goal, how are you going to create, quote unquote, time in your schedule to work on your goal? Just because we said we want to do it doesn't mean there's time to do it. How do we stay on track? So the email piece with the videos, with the action steps, with the journal, and then there's a private forum group where people can bounce ideas off each other and gain support. All of that is hooked in together so that you can make progress. So at the end of 30 days, you're in a better place than you were when you started, and you have firm footing to keep moving forward.
It all sounds good to me.
Good.
You could put your work-at-home goal in there.
Right.
The idea that you get feedback, too, I think is really helpful.
Yes. And the connections that people make, it always amazes me how when you're on the Internet, geography has no play. And so there are people connecting, from Australia and Canada and, and then people who've never met each other who live a half hour apart meet through the group. It's all of those pieces that I think are super exciting. And part of the process through the 30 days, because AWE stands for awareness, work, and evaluation. And that evaluation piece we so often overlook. And so there's that opportunity to stop and reflect back and celebrate success. Because a small step consistently is how progress is made. And we forget sometimes how far we've come because we're still not there, wherever there is. And so this is a vehicle to look at all those pieces.
Right. And then I guess there's probably a little accountability. If you're just sitting home by yourself and you're doing a workbook, nobody knows what you're doing. It's really easy to let yourself off the hook. Whereas, if you're in a group, you're going to get cheers and support and feedback and all that kind of stuff, and you can give that too. But there is this sense of I better do it because I told them I was going to do it. A lot of people they're willing to work harder for other people than themselves, which is kind of weird, but there you go.
Well, just like you shared a couple episodes ago about working on the Ultimate Blog Challenge. You put it out there. I'm going to blog every day for 30 days.
Yeah.
We now know you're doing that, and people may or may not be checking in, but your perception is they are checking in, and it's going to keep you on task to finish.
Yeah. Well, then let's go to the other part of that is sometimes you don't finish it. I got sick in the middle of the month. And that was one of the things that was like, whenever you have to do everything, you do everything you have to do. It was sort of like, I got to let something go because I'm sick as a dog. And that was it. And then there's this sense of like, oh, my God, I'm a failure, so I'm going to give up. I'm not going to do it. But I always like, when you have the failure, it doesn't mean you can't start. It's like dieting. You mess up your diet, so then you, like, eat bad the rest of the day, and then you eat bad the rest of the week, and then you eat bad the rest of the month, and then it's like, any moment you can get back in the game.
Right. It's like the idea if you walk out and you have one flat tire, you're certainly not going to go slash the other three.
Right.
You're going to fix the one and move on. And so with that accountability piece, there's also that idea of it's not really time management, it's choice management.
Yeah.
And you're making choices based on the information you have at the time. And so like you said, you were sick as a dog. Well, then you did what had to be done, and those were your choices. And those are great choices.
Yeah.
You prioritize and you move forward with what you have. So maybe the challenge doesn't go the whole 30 days. Maybe you take a week off and then finish up later. It's what you need it to be, not necessarily how it was designed to be.
Yeah. And the thing is, and especially with National Novel Writing Month, I have a lot of people, it's like, oh, I could never do that, and I'm like, you know what? Even if you don't hit the goal, you're going to have more words written than you would have had if you didn't try. Right. I mean, I've come out of that with only 20,000 words, but it was 20,000 words more than I would have had if I hadn't tried,
Right.
It's that whole, just do something, that 15-minute a day thing. Any little bit you do is probably going to be more than if you just sit there and like, oh, it's too much, or, waiting for this humongous block of time to do something.
Right.
Yeah.
Because how do you get those humongous blocks of time? In order for those to happen, you have to plan for them, and a lot of things have to change in what's in your current calendar, in your current schedule, to give yourself a humongous block of time. So often it's just better or easier or more effective to just do small blocks of time.
Yeah. Because who really has huge blocks?
Right. Right. Because when you're focusing on one big thing, all those other things go to the wayside.
Yeah. And sometimes, that big thing requires other things to happen that can't happen as fast as you want them to. For example, people want a work-at-home job. Well, you could send out, a bunch of resumes, but you're still waiting for the people on the other end,
Exactly.
to get back to you, So, there's even with projects and things like that, a lot of times they just can't. Even if you had a big block of time, there's still sort of like other people you're having to wait on. So, let me ask you this. Just as we're getting ready to close, one thing I really like about the show is, one, they get to hear stories of people who've, been where they were, but are now, working at home like they want to do. But I also like them to walk away with something they could do right now that's going to start the journey for them or continue the journey for them. So since you are the time management person, I want you to give us some ideas of, when they, get off listening to this, what is something they can do today that's going to help them?
My advice is always, when I'm asked this question, is to take action. Whatever form that looks like to everyone that's listening, it's going to look different for each and every person. But it's to take action. So if there was something here that you heard today that you're like, oh, man, I do chase the next shiny object. I should look and see how do these relate back to my goals. Then right there, that's your action step. Figure out how do you make that happen. Or, wow, I am trying to find the best time to do, a big chunk of time to do this one project. What's one small step I can take? Let's go back. So whatever spoke to you during this episode, take action on that piece. Just figure out a way to get it into your calendar, get it in front of your awareness, and take action. Or maybe it's, man, I don't know where to start. I need to reach out for someone to help me. Coaches need coaches. We, like they say, when you're in your car, you have, 1, 2, 3 mirrors, and you still have a blind spot. We need someone to help us see what we can't see because we're stuck in the weeds. We're right there in the middle of the situation. So maybe it's to reach out to a friend to say, here's the challenge I'm having, or this is what I'm doing. What do you see that I could do better or that would work better? So it's take action on something today. Reach out for a resource. Go in on your site. There's a ton of great information on that site. And find something else that you can read and take action on, but take action on something.
Yeah, action. Action's always the best choice for everything. If you're feeling down and unaccomplished, do something.
Right. Right. Momentum breeds more momentum.
Yeah. It's like pushing a parked car. That's my favorite, one of my favorite analogies,
Yeah.
Because it covers everything. So much work in the beginning, but once you get that pup going, if you continue to give a little bit of pressure, you got all that momentum, but don't stop or it will slow down. But yeah, action sort of breeds more action, and it also takes energy, so it breeds more energy, and so yeah, I love that. Take action. Do something, anything, even if it's little. Go buy a domain name.
Yes, something. Take a step closer.
Yeah, or send out a resume, whatever it is. Well, Lisa, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. I took tons of notes. So you're all going to want to go check out her website, SystemSavvyConsulting.com. Check out her book. She's actually, if you go to Amazon, there's a couple books up there I see that you might want to check out there as well. And Lisa, thank you so much again. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for, working through all those tech glitches we had there in the middle. I appreciate your patience.
Now we're on to the next steps to work at home success, where we take what we learned in the show and apply it so that you can be a work at home success. And Lisa said a couple of things I wanted to highlight. The first one was just because you're good at something doesn't mean that that is the thing that you should be doing from home. Now, I do believe that when it comes to working from home, you should tap into skills that you already have or something that you already love to do or something that you're passionate about. Even if you don't even know about it yet, but you're passionate about it, that's really should be how you make the determination of what you do. But just because you're really good at it, that alone may not be enough. Working at home is hard, and if you're good at something but you hate doing it, working at home is going to be really hard. You're not going to enjoy it. That may cause you not to be successful at it. So you need to look at things, like Lisa said, that give you energy instead of taking energy away. What can you get excited about doing every day? And test drive these things. You don't have to fully commit a lot of times to something. You can sort of try things on and see how you feel about them, see how they work. Because a lot of times things sound great in theory, but when you actually start getting to the day-to-day doing them, they're kind of tedious and not fun. And working at home, a lot of times, if you can do it around another job or around your kids or whatever, you can test drive them and see what you think about it. And if you can do that, I really, really recommend that you do that.
She also, when talking about time management, we talked a little bit about, how you kind of do that, but she really focused on, goals, and that time management was really about choice management. And it was also about, how do those choices relate to your goals? And are you seeking, doing the right activities? And are you doing activities? I love the comment she made about one idea acted on is better than 25 that you're thinking about. And if you're someone like me and you've got a lot of ideas and you get distracted easy from other ideas coming on, that becomes a real challenge. At some point, you have to stop thinking and you have to start doing. And then when you start doing, now you're having to fit these activities into an already busy day. And at that point, you're making choices. You're having to prioritize what is important to you to get done during the day and what is not so important. And a lot of people don't feel like they have enough time, but if you're watching TV and you're pursuing hobbies, you probably do have time. And a lot of times it just takes a little bit of time to do something, anything, to start building your business. Once you have a draft of a resume, it doesn't take that long to tweak it so that you can send it off to a job that you've seen online. If you're building a blog online, it doesn't take that long to do social media around your blog or to email a list of people that have signed up to know more about what you're blogging about. So a lot of times these things don't necessarily have to take all day. And long projects, you want them done ASAP, but you have to pace yourself, and you just make a list of what needs to be done. You systematically start going through it. But again, it's all about choices. A lot of times when you see a project and your goal is down the road, sometimes you put that aside for something that's more immediate, or you like, well, I'm just going to watch TV today, I'll do that tomorrow. But of course, that puts you off one more day. So I really like her talking about how it really has to do about choices and whether or not the choices you're making are fitting your goal. It's kind of like being on a diet and you let yourself eat the chocolate. Eating the chocolate doesn't fit with your goal of losing weight. I'm actually going to take that back, because if you eat dark chocolate and it's a small amount, it can actually be good for you. So let's talk about chocolate cake instead. So if you're eating chocolate cake, it's not in line with your goal of losing weight. And so it means you always have to be sort of cognizant of, what are my goals? What do I want to achieve? And is this thing that I'm doing right now going to move me closer to that goal? It's a lot easier said than done, I know, but you got to make an effort to do it that way. That is it for this week's show. I hope that you enjoyed it, and we'll check out Lisa's website over at SystemSavvyConsulting.com. And until next time, this is Leslie Truex, also known as the Pajama Mama, wishing you peace, love, and pajamas.